Welcome again, everyone. Cannabis News with Joe Klare. It is December 13th, 2018. Presented, as always, by the Marijuana Times. Click that video tab at marijuanatimes.org to find this show. Also, a bunch of great articles there as well. Social media links and more. Go check it out. Today, we're talking about, the show has a little bit of an international flavor. We're talking about New Zealand, Thailand, and Miley Cyrus, who is an international pop star. So, yeah, it's a theme. Again, I really don't go for themes, but sometimes they come together, and when they do, I just, ride the wave of accidental genius. There you go. That's a good phrase. Ride the wave of accidental genius. Man, I'm just, accidental genius. There you go. It's the name of my new mixtape. It's fire. Go check it out. Before we get to all that, of course, I have to tell you, and I want to tell you, the Cannabis News is brought to you by Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides, grow safe and poison-free. Don't use harmful chemicals on what you're growing because people are going to be ingesting that cannabis. Don't use banned pesticides. All of these things can be accomplished if you go to nature-side.com and check out Natureside. Proud sponsor of Cannabis News, organic, all-natural pesticides. And I don't really point out enough, I don't think, that even if you're not a cannabis grower, if you're growing tomatoes or whatever, there's advantages to having natural organic pesticides. Go check them out, nature-side.com. Proud sponsor of the show. As I mentioned, this first story is from marijuanatimes.org by yours truly. New Zealand is jumping on the medical marijuana bandwagon. Basically, the way this article kind of played out as I wrote it wasn't as... There's a little light on the actual news from New Zealand and more, my commentary about something that I read in the story, which if you know me and if you've read me for a long time or watched this show, that's something that I'm liable to do. But I do mention New Zealand, and New Zealand is working on medical marijuana. I was reading the story about New Zealand legalizing medical marijuana, and I got to this following sentence. Quote, "The legislation will allow terminally ill patients to begin smoking illegal pot immediately without facing the possibility of prosecution." Basically, they're going to roll out the program and the dispensaries and all that, and things decide on exports and just a whole range of things. But immediately, terminally ill patients will be allowed to use cannabis. Now, there's a couple things that stand out about that story, or that sentence, which makes up the second paragraph of the story that I'm referring to, is that one, it reminds you that terminally ill patients were considered criminals in New Zealand for using medical cannabis. And you realize that that's true for just about every other country in the world still to this day. Even the United States, as I mentioned in the article, which has been, activists here have been successfully legalizing medical marijuana in states for over 20 years. There's still many places in the United States where terminally ill patients are considered criminals if they were to ingest cannabis. So that's the first thing you realize, is that millions and millions of people over the decades have gone through this very thing. The second thing you realize is how, and that's something that we don't think about, it's so self-evidently illogical to tell a terminally ill patient that they cannot use cannabis no matter what the reason. It just defies logic on every level. Say you have a terminal patient in front of you. What are you going to say to them to mitigate against their wish to use cannabis? You say, oh, we don't know if, it may be bad for you. Marijuana may be bad for you. I've seen stories and studies that say, it could be bad. They're dying. They're terminally ill. What else are you going to say? Oh, we don't know the long-term effects of medical cannabis and using medical cannabis on a regular basis. They're dying. They don't care. You're not going to look at a terminally ill patient and say, no, you can't smoke marijuana. And yet we got so used to this regime of things that say, well, if someone's dying of, say, cancer and they smoke a joint, what they just did was illegal. We've labeled that illegal for that person. Reminds me a lot of my stepdad. My stepdad died about almost exactly 13 years ago. It was December 5th, 2005. He was on his third bout of cancer. He died from cancer. He'd already had half of a lung removed. He had surgeries. Even long before that, he had surgeries on his back and he had metal pins and just the whole 9 yards. He was, health-wise, he wasn't great. So after he beat the first 2 cancers, he's attempting to beat the 3rd cancer, and his doctor tells him there's nothing left for us to do. This cancer is going to take you. So what did this man who had throat cancer and lung cancer do? He returned to smoking cigarettes. Now, on the face of that, this is, well, that's crazy. That's what killed you. And that I could look him in the eye. I could have and said, well, this is probably going to hasten your death a little bit. There's no possible way this is going to help. It's only going to hinder any kind of, extension of time beyond what the doctor said that you're going to have. But when you dig down deep into it, he liked smoking cigarettes. And he was terminally ill, and he was going to die. And to tell him that he shouldn't smoke a cigarette, this is kind of silly. He liked smoking cigarettes. He wanted to smoke cigarettes before he died. He was going to die of the cancer. Yes, the cigarettes caused it. And I use that example because cigarettes are so much more harmful than marijuana. I would have been right to tell him, you probably shouldn't do that. But then he would have been right to say to me, I'm going to die. Who cares? Why are you worried about it? Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I want to smoke a cigarette. Yes, I have lung cancer. Yes, it's bad for you. Yes, what I'm doing caused what's going to kill me. But I like smoking cigarettes. I like the feeling it gives me. I'm going to die. Why wouldn't I do that? Now, back to marijuana, which I said is so much more safer than tobacco and cigarettes and anything in that realm. There's no comparison. They're not even on the same level of safety. So to tell someone, well, no, I know you're dying, and that's really sad. It's a really sad story. If you smoke that joint, technically, you are a criminal. And we accept that because that's so common. That's such a common thing in this world that those people are considered criminals. Now, obviously, we can go argue about, other people, but just in the realm of terminally ill people, to say to someone, you can't smoke that joint, even if it were true that it would hurt them, which is not, who cares? Who cares? You're terminally ill. And when now countries have to pass legislation to decriminalize those people, and that is nuts. And that's basically the crux of, I kind of piggyback the New Zealand story and to go into that. It's linked in the description of this video, as are all of the articles that I talk about. This next story from Reuters.com, weeding out foreigners, strains over Thailand's legalization of marijuana. Wow, they fit 2 marijuana puns into that title. That is impressive. Speaking of impressive, the guy in that picture, if you're watching the video version of the show, that guy in that picture is impressive. It's bold. Getting a pot leaf tattoo, well, I guess technically that's a hemp leaf, tattoo on your face, that's bold. That's bold. For those of you only listening to the audio version of this show, find this story. It's a Reuters story. Search weeding out foreigners and check out the guy on the front page. That is, well, it's a bold look. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. It's not a look I would go with, but hey, to each their own. I mean, I see that guy come and be like, yeah, that's a guy I want to talk to. It's not scary. It's not menacing. It's, it's a cannabis leaf. It's nice. Thailand is set to become the first Asian country to legalize medical marijuana, but a battle is brewing between local and foreign firms over control of the potentially lucrative market. With Parliament in Thailand set to approve the legislation as early as next month, Thai businesses and activists have raised concerns that a raft of patent requests filed by foreign firms could allow them to dominate the market and make it harder for researchers to access marijuana extracts. Chukwan Kitty Chupaka, an activist with Highlands Network, which is a cannabis legalization advocacy group in Thailand, said, quote, granting these patents is scary because it blocks innovation and stops other businesses and researchers from doing anything related to cannabis. So interesting things going on in Thailand. You probably see that kind of battle, depending on how things are set up in each country. Because we can lose sight of the fact easily, especially if we're in North America and we're involved in the Canada's medical marijuana program and recent legalization and what's going on in all the states in the United States. And then we got Mexico, and they're moving quickly towards some sort of marijuana legalization regime or regulatory structure or whatever. That most countries, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that most countries have marijuana as an illegal product. And they all going to have to go about remedying that situation. I imagine there will still be some countries that are, they'll just hold out forever until the destruction of their country, and until the sun burns out or the asteroid hits or something. They'll cling to that marijuana prohibition. But a lot of countries, like Thailand, are moving in a different direction, and that is good news. And there will be battles, and that's okay. It's better to battle over marijuana legalization than to sit under marijuana prohibition. Another pithy quote. I'm good for a couple of show. You who listen to and watch this regularly, you know that. This last story from USA Today, the media entity with the worst websites in the world. I'm not going to go into that rant again, but USA Today oh man, you're killing me. Killing me with your website design. Miley Cyrus smoking weed again. Quote, my mom got me back on it. Miley Cyrus says when she's working, like appearing on Saturday Night Live this weekend, she won't be toking, but she's returned to smoking marijuana at other times. 26-year-old singer told The Sun that after her sworn off the substance last year, her mom, Tish Cyrus, reintroduced her to cannabis. Quote, my mom got me back on it. When I'm just working, I don't think I'm functioning at my highest, most intelligent, most being able to be as aware and as present. So I don't smoke when I work. I guess when she relaxes and has downtime and whatnot, that she has gone back to it. And it's not newsworthy per se, other than the fact it's Miley Cyrus, and she's been a very vocal very vocal, outspoken person who's used cannabis, a celebrity, obviously. But I do bring up the story for a reason. But first, this is a pretty funny story. She joked with host Andy Cohen during an appearance on his show to promote her new single with Mark Ronson. She said, quote, my dad's got a farm, and her mom is like, I'm just going to quit everything and grow. She's my manager, so if my mom quits everything, that's quitting me to go home and grow weed, which doesn't sound like the best idea. My mom could barely keep us alive. She's not going to grow pot. I guess it's not the nicest thing to say about your mom. So she had trouble growing us, much less growing marijuana. But I'm sure it's fine. Cyrus said in a Billboard story in 2017 that she quit weed because she wanted to be, quote, super clear and sharp as she readied the release of Younger Now. She told Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show that same year that she had a nightmare about hosting Saturday Night Live stoned. I don't know. I think that'd be a pretty good show, but, And it reminds me of a couple things, as I said. First of all, that marijuana affects everyone differently. Some people don't want to do it while they work. Some people do. It's, it's the great thing, and all activists have ever wanted, is for people to have the choice, depending on what they're doing, to use cannabis without fear of arrest and prosecution. But it also highlights kind of the way things are trending. As I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening that can relate to one of their parents kind of directing them toward cannabis, as opposed to, vice versa, them directing one of their parents. I'm sure that happens a lot too. Obviously, children turning on, quote unquote, their parents, for lack of a better phrase, to cannabis, to use a phrase from the 60s, as a matter of fact. So there's a lot of it going that way, but there's also a lot of it coming the other way. Parents kind of directing their kids and helping their kids find something that may be helpful to them, or at the very least may enjoy, like someone enjoys a glass of wine or whatever. Again, people should have the choice, but it's interesting example of parents of reintroducing their children to something that not so long ago parents were telling their kids to stay away from at all costs, because it was going to be a gateway to drugs that would kill them and leave them in the gutter, penniless and destitute and unemployed and homeless. And now Miley Cyrus's mom was like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting being your manager and going home to the farm and growing some weed. That's going to do it for Cannabis News. Thanks, everybody, for checking out the show, for liking and sharing and commenting. Search the Marijuana Times on Apple Podcasts for the audio-only version of the show. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. Thank you to Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Thank you all for watching and listening today, and we'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.